Hello, everyone. This is Sobriety with Drake, the YouTube channel where we talk about all things addiction, recovery, and sobriety related. And today I will be ranking the top 10 worst episodes of Intervention. Next week, I'll be doing the top 10 best episodes of Intervention. And the way I'm doing this ranking is not by my personal opinion. I'm actually taking data from IMDb and ranking them based on what is the worst rated episodes on IMDb and ranking the top 10 from worst to least worst. You'll find that with this ranking, a lot of the results are actually going to be kind of surprising, but then you'll also notice some patterns in the results, which we'll talk about as I go on in the video. Some of the episodes in the ranking will have the same exact rating. So to break the tie between the ones with the same rating, I'll be ranking the one that's worse as the one that has more votes on it because it has a larger sample size. So let's get started. Coming in at number 10 is season 1, episode 11, Rachel and Tommy. And this has a rating of 6.7 out of 10. So, as fans of the show Intervention might know, sometimes episodes contain like two different addicts with totally different stories from totally different places in one episode, and some episodes just contain or focus on like one addict. So this is one of the episodes that focused on two different addicts. There was Rachel, who is a heroin addict who turned to prostitution to support her drug habit, and then there was Tommy, a cocaine addict who had a high up white collar job and quit his job due to his addiction and ended up homeless. And it chronicles the lives of both of them in this episode. One of the most notable moments from this episode is like when Rachel is falling asleep at her lawyer's office. And why this one is considered one of the worst, I believe, is because of the like editing and the storytelling of Tommy in this episode. I don't think Rachel's part has anything to do with the rating. I think it's more so Tommy's because during this episode they didn't show any photos or bring up any story about his past. They didn't talk about his past at all or how he came to be an addict. And also they never showed him actually doing cocaine or getting the cocaine. So it was kind of like a very mysterious way of portraying his story, and a lot of people and critics of the episode have called out this episode for possibly being like fake. So that's why this one I believe is rated at number 10 with a rating of 6.7 out of 10. Next, coming in at number 9 is season 22, episode 5, Erica, with a rating of 6.7 out of 10 as well. And Erica, she is a heroin addict who had actually overcame her addiction to heroin that was caused by childhood trauma. But then when the 2020 pandemic hit, her anxiety and all these stresses over the pandemic caused her to relapse. And it's chronicling her like experiences with the pandemic and addiction. Some notable moments from this episode are her doing Xanax bars and how crazy the way she mixed drugs was. Also her mom telling her that she would have never been raped if she obeyed the house rules. And then also how much the pandemic affected her addiction and played a part in it. And the reason why I think this is ranked as one of the worst episodes of Intervention is because of how controversial and political the views on the pandemic can be. And the fact that during the episode, she used her anxiety as a crutch and excuse a lot. And a lot of people didn't like the way she blamed the pandemic on causing her addiction. But in my opinion, I don't think that makes it a negative. I think a lot of people struggled with addiction because of the pandemic. So I think it was good for the show to, portray someone struggling with addiction because of the pandemic because so many people were going through such a similar thing. So a lot of people have commented on this episode saying they could really relate. But overall, it was mixed. It was met with a lot of mixed responses, mostly negative because of how the pandemic played a part in it. So this next one kind of surprised me that it made the list. I didn't really see why it was rated so low. But after like digging online and seeing the reactions about this episode, I can kind of understand why. And coming in at number 8 is season 23, episode 3, Jesse, with a rating of 6.4 out of 10. And Jesse is a fentanyl addict who spiraled into addiction after growing up in a very tumultuous home with a lot of trauma and dysfunction. And the most notable moment from this episode is just like the pure sadness of what Jesse had to endure with her family. And the reason why I think this one was rated so low is because of family doing an intervention just seemed kind of hypocritical. Like you couldn't really tell if they were actually sober, the family, and they were all like recently using. So it didn't seem right that they were like doing this intervention for Jesse when they also had their own addiction problems. And also the way Jesse was treated growing up and like the way that she was treating the episode, which was very hurtful and painful and just hard to watch. The next one is another one where I don't really agree if it's that it's as bad as the rating makes it seem. But coming in at number 7 is season 15, episode 9, Alicia D. And this one has a rating of 6.3 out of 10. And during this episode, Alicia, a Xanax and heroin addict, falls into a painful, self destructive battle with addiction after reconnecting with her biological father. Some notable moments for this episode are when she was at work answering the phone and was like nodding off. Just the pure amount of nodding off in this episode. Her pretending to read papers that were blank at work. And the reason why this one is rated so low, it could be maybe because all of the nodding off in this episode, it's like a lot and it's really repetitive. They just show it a little too much. But I think the real reason why was her spoiled and like narcissistic attitude during the episode. It was just very off-putting, and like a lot of people just who watched the episode didn't really like her. But I also really disagree that this one should be this low because the follow-up is really amazing, and she's also, according to interventiondirectory.com, she's doing really well now. So like it was a good outcome at the end of the episode. So that's why I don't believe this one should be this low, but it's at number 7. So the next few on this list are all coming from like earlier seasons of the show, and the next one on this list coming in at number 6 is another like split episode of two different addicts in one episode. And number 6 from season 2 episode 9 is Annie and Amy with a rating of 6.3 out of 10. Just so you know, Annie is the picture on top and Amy is the picture on the bottom. So Annie is an anorexic and bulimic, and her fiance Kevin desperately wanted an intervention to save her life. And then there's Amy, who is a meth addict who's turned to drugs after being molested at age 16, and then she also self-harms through cutting. Some notable moments from this episode are Annie naming her eating disorder Eddie, and then also Amy's just fun personality overall and how she would seem so much better without the drugs. And the reason why this episode is the worst, which we'll see in like a pattern of the next few ones, is because of Annie. Not because of Amy. It's because Annie is has an eating disorder, and it's not like a drug or alcohol addiction. As I've noticed with the lowest rated episodes, a lot of them are episodes that focus on things that are not drugs and alcohol. And a lot of people of the show that are fans of the show Intervention just don't find that as entertaining or riveting television. They expect the show to be about, drug and alcohol addiction only, which I again disagree with. I think there's all sorts types of addiction, and gambling, anorexia, bulimia. Those are all addictions as well. So I think that's great that the show shows different types of addiction in a different light. And I don't really agree with the way that these are rated. So you'll see it in the next few. It's a pattern. Next, coming in at number 5 from season 3, episode 2, we have Kim with a rating of 6.2 out of 10. Kim suffers from anorexia, and that's affected her marriage negatively, which has led like to a current divorce that she's going through, and then she's like living with her parents who she doesn't get along with. So that's a little bit of an overview of this episode. The most notable moments of this episode are just like the extent to which she hates herself and her disturbing thoughts and like mental illness. And the reason why I think this one is rated so low is again just like the last one with Annie. It's a episode about an eating disorder. It's not about a drug or alcohol addiction, which a lot of people when they watch the show Intervention, they expect to watch a show about drug and alcohol intervention. So that's why this one again is rated low. Again, I don't agree with it. I think all addictions are valid and are interesting to watch. But a lot of people don't agree. They think that, eating disorders are a little bit less riveting television than alcohol and drug addictions. So that's why this one is rated at number 5 with a rating of 6.2 out of 10. Next up at number 4, we have season 1, episode 8, Tina, with a rating of 5.8 out of 10. And Tina, she is a gambling addict who also has a addiction to prescription pills like Vicodin. The most notable moment of this episode is when she was at the horse track, like where you gamble and bet on horses. And she was with her toddler son who was like following her around, and how that scene kind of like was very controversial to people when seeing it. And the reason why I think this one is rated so low is similar to the last two. It's about mostly a gambling addiction. They don't really focus much on her prescription pill addiction, but more so her gambling addiction. And I again think people just don't find it as very entertaining as like drug and alcohol addiction, or it's not what they expect to see with Intervention. A lot of the earlier seasons did this where they focused on other kinds of addictions, which they stopped doing for some reason. They stopped maybe because people just didn't find like the episodes very entertaining. But again, it's one of the lower rated episodes because of that. All right, so now we're at the top 3 worst episodes of Intervention, and coming in at number 3 is season 5, episode 6, Casey, with a rating of 5.4 out of 10. Casey is an addict who uses crystal meth and is also bulimic. Some notable moments about this episode are how she got addicted to drugs as a way to lose weight, which was never really seen on the show before, and is a very interesting way of developing an addiction to lose weight. And then also how everyone in the episode, tiptoes around her and then they wait on her hand and foot. And the reason why I think this one is rated so low and in the top three of the worst episodes of Intervention, it's just because of how unlikable Casey comes off as. The way she treats her people close to her, like her relationship and her family, and everyone is just like very off-putting. And a lot of people just reacted very negatively to that. And also, viewers like online have described her as like abusive and obnoxious during this episode. All right, so now we're done with that like string of episodes from earlier seasons. Now the last two on the list are actually from more recent seasons, and coming in at number two, from season 22, episode 7 is Jake with a rating of 5.3 out of 10. So Jake moved to Vegas and was working as a conservative political party worker, and came out as gay to his family and colleagues, and was faced with like a lot of rejection and harsh critiques from his family and colleagues after coming out as gay, and then he turned to an alcohol addiction due to that. Some notable moments from this episode are him working in the field of conservative politics and him not finding success during that. Him being alone with only random bar friends to lean on, being like completely isolated, and then also him falling down a lot when he was drunk. The reason why I think this episode is rated number two worst of all intervention episodes is because of the blatant homophobia in this episode. It's really aggravating to watch, especially as like for me, someone who is gay. It's really sad to see, someone treated like this because of their sexual orientation. And also, there was another part of this episode that I think is the reason why it's rated so low. There's a like little storyline and scene where they insinuate that Jake is a sex worker, without showing any real evidence of him being a sex worker, and it just comes off as like unnecessary and salacious to show in the episode. So I think that is why this is ranked as number two as the worst episode of Intervention. Okay, so we are now at the final number one ranking of the worst rated episode of Intervention of all time. And coming in at number one from season 24, episode 6, is Tina featuring Amber Rose with a rating of 4.1 out of 10. So that's like a big like downgrade from the last one. 4.1 out of 10. Wow. So this episode follows social media personality and media sensation Amber Rose as she travels home to try and save her childhood friend Tina from her addiction to fentanyl and crack. And I think this one's pretty obvious why it's rated the worst episode of all time. First of all, them including like a celebrity as like the main focus of this episode, kind of is a little bit gimmicky and cheesy, and it just shows that like it seems like they're trying to like gain viewers through her celebrity if it's to the show Intervention. Also, it didn't go well over with viewers because the episode was like mainly focused on Amber Rose. Like she was the main character of the episode, whereas her friend Tina, who was the one struggling with addiction, was like a kind of like a side subplot character. And like Tina didn't even get any confessionals or like personal narrative or story on her addiction. It was all through the lens of Amber Rose. And also, they just like changed the format of how intervention, like that formula of how intervention episodes run. It was like just a very unique and different episode of intervention, which just did not go over well with viewers. So that is number one worst episode of intervention of all time. Tina featuring Amber Rose, season 24, episode 6, with a rating of 4.1 out of 10. So there you have it. That was the 10 worst episodes of intervention ranked by IMDb. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for my top 10 best episodes of Intervention, also ranked by IMDb, which will be coming up soon. And also, you can check out my videos about intervention, such as my Intervention Where Are They Now series. I've done 2 episodes of Intervention Where Are They Now, talking about where certain people from the show have been since the show was done filming. So those are pretty interesting. So you can check those out. I also have videos about my struggles with my own addiction and certain things I went through in my addiction. So I hope you find those interesting, and I hope you subscribe to my channel and comment and like if you like this video. Thanks so much. Have a great day, guys. Bye.